I haven't updated my portfolio site in years. When I made it in React, and now I'm a lot stronger in Angular, and also my web development skills have improved a ton. So I think it's time to rewrite it. I'm still going to use the same basic design and assets, but start with a clean slate in Angular and clean up what I can. This is what the site looks like now. You can see I displayed my skills in all these little pill sticky things because I thought it would be cool to make it a little interactive. You can drag them around, and when you drop them, it will jump to where it's supposed to go, but there's no smooth drag, so I definitely want to fix that. I made this little pixel art image of me on the couch. I don't know that I want to keep that. I've learned more about web accessibility since, and I don't really want an animation on my site, but it is very cute. And then here are my projects. Again, I need to update these because some of these are things that I did back in college, like Spambot and the acapella game that I made. Yeah, so definitely things that we can improve on. So let's go ahead and generate a new Angular project. I've gone ahead and generated the new site, and we can see it's set up with Angular's default page. I really like the new colors in the Angular v17. Obviously, I'm biased because I did a bit of work for the Angular team on the new Angular dev site. Go check out the playground code if you haven't already. Regardless, we can just go ahead and get rid of all of this because none of it is staying. And if we refresh, blank page. Now, usually I'll use Angular's material if I want to get started faster with some design elements, but especially because this is my portfolio site, I want to do it from scratch. Let's go ahead in Style CSS and add some default styles to the HTML and the body to make sure that we're not getting those weird margins, and just kind of reset what's happening. Height 100, width 100, padding 0, margin 0, and then on body, I'm gonna do background color, the same color that I had before, which was 31516. And I could probably make this code quality better by using that as a variable, but I don't think I use it anywhere else. I think the next thing that I want to do is add like a main section so I can keep the margins consistent. Yeah. I'll go ahead and just put some lorem ipsum text in there. Because on main, I want some like margins to happen. So I'm gonna make the width, let's say 90%, and then do margin auto, so that on any page that we have here, it'll keep that centered, which is awesome. Let's go ahead and make the text color white too. Now I'm going to generate a new Angular component for the skills piece, which we're going to try and recreate, but better. And then why not? We'll split it into generating a header piece as well. And then what did I have next? Projects. I want to highlight my projects first because that's my big thing. I have a lot of projects. Projects, and then experience. And then I didn't have a footer on the original site, so I'm not going to make a whole component for a footer, but I might put a footer just in the like app component. So the skills we want to exist outside of this main container that we've created because we don't want it to be confined to those same margins. We want it to spread a little bit. But then the header, we do want to be inside that main component because we want, again, the margins to line up. And I'm not importing these, am I? Component. Experience. Component. Is that everything that I did? Let's check that renders. Yes, it does. Beautiful. Okay, and then And what else did I have here? The header piece. And then we're just going to go right in with the projects piece. Nope, not inside. And then experience. And then I'm going to put a footer in here just in case we can style that later. Nothing's in it, but we'll get there. This all looks bad. So let's go ahead and add some more styling to our main styles SCSS page. So we'll make the color white. And I know the font I want to use is Montserrat. Yeah, Montserrat is on Google Fonts. So let's grab regular. Let's grab medium. Do I need it bold anywhere? Maybe just in case. Drop it in that style link. And then coming back here to do, there we go. Montserrat is now our font family. I'm pretty sure I also need, and I should have worked this up beforehand. Of course I should have. Staliches. I don't know how to say that. That's okay. I know I want this one. Okay, now let's finally grab that correct link. Body should have font family Montserrat, but any headers that we use, I'm gonna want Staliches. Wow, I really should look up how to say that. All right, that's looking closer already. Let's leave skills the way it is, but let's start to fill out header. We'll put it in H1. Accessibility rules, you should always have an H1. So in this case, it's gonna be this. Hello, I'm Reagan. And then this is where I'm going to do my little about me, but for now it's just going to be Lorem Ipsum text. And then this is where I want to include some like project, some links to like my GitHub, my CodePen, honestly like my socials, because that's a part of my brand and projects that I've done. So let's go ahead, put these into a div, and they're going to be images, but they're going to function as links. So importantly, I want that A tag, and then we'll put the image inside of it. Make it blank so they open in a new window. And we'll put in an href. And then it's going to be an image, which we'll add later. But I'm going to do the alt text to be what it's actually going to go to. Because in this case, we have no discernible. Discernible is readable to a screen reader. So right now we have no discernible text for a screen reader. If it comes across this A tag, it'll just say there's a link, but there's nothing on that link. Because there's an image inside without an alt tag, it would default to reading the source URL, which isn't helpful. A blank alt tag would cause a screen reader just to skip it, assume it's purely decorative. But right now this has no discernible text, so we need to add something on here. So like this will be the GitHub link. So I'm just going to put GitHub. And importantly, like you don't have to put something like icon because the screen reader will read out that it's an image. So all we need is this to say GitHub. I've just gone ahead and grabbed those links from my old site. Should probably reduce the size of the Instagram and TikTok ones. But this is the GitHub one that we're adding. So now that I have it in the assets folder, I can link it from where we're calling it in the header, which is assets, links, GitHub, PNG. There, now that's a lovely link. There's nothing, it doesn't go anywhere yet. But I've grabbed my GitHub link and it is GitHub/Reagan Hinkie. Now that should work. A thing I did on my old site that I actually really liked is when you hovered over the link, it would show you the name. So let's go ahead and add that in here too. So I'm going to add a little div. Oops. I'm going to give it a class, class hidden label, and it's going to say GitHub. Gorgeous. Now here in styling, here's what we're going to do. So we have the A tag, and the A tag holds the image and it also holds that label now. So I want to make sure it holds them like vertically aligned together. So I'm actually going to make this a flex box because I love flex boxes. flex direction column. And then I forget, I think it's align items, but it could be justify content. Yeah, it'll do both because now that it's a flex, it thinks that it should be a full block. It really shouldn't do that, but that's okay. We'll fix that part later because now I'm going to say if there's a div inside the A tag, which is our label, div hidden label. I want to take off that underline, text declaration none, and I want to fix the color, inherit, and that should make it just like plain, nope, it didn't. Because it's now inheriting from the A tag and not the style sheet. So I'm actually going to manually make that white again. Does it still have an underline? Yes. Do I need to put that here? Yes. Do I still need it on the label itself? No, that cleans up. Great. And then I want the font size to be a little smaller. Let's guess like 1.5 REM. Way too small. 2.75. That's a little closer. Okay, I like that. I like using REM because it means responsive to like the root element of the page. So if somebody's changed their like custom sizing for a browser, it'll respond to that. So that's really nice, more accessible. Okay, and then usually I don't want this to be visible. I only want that visible if we're hovering or focusing on it. I also want like a little glow behind it when you focus. So I could do like a before. To make a pseudo element like before show up, we have to give it content, position absolute. And just to see it show up, I'm gonna do like background color of black. Oh, and it doesn't have height or width, so height 100, width 100. Will that show up? Let's go into inspect here and see why. Oh, because it thinks this is looking for a sub element and it's not. I want it to be on the same element. So I'm going to do an and to establish that there. And that became huge, probably because A doesn't have position relative yet. Let's see if that fixes it. It does, but remember it thinks that this is a whole block now. So we got to fix that. Why does it think it's a whole block? I don't know. Now, I like working in Chrome's like editor like this because I can change things in real time and then figure out what's actually working. In this div, I'm going to make this div class links because what's happening is the flexbox is kind of automatically expanding to the edge of its container. But if I give it a little more information with class links, guess what? I'm also going to make this a flexbox just to hold all my links nicely. Yeah, that fixed it. There we go. And then when I put them each next to each other, that'll look really good. Let's give this some transparency to make sure it's going on behind that. Let's go ahead and use Z index just to make sure this syncs behind the image. Yeah, that worked. That'll do. And actually, let's set the width of these things too. So if I make that 100, how's that feel? And then we gotta fix the image inside it too. Image 100. Yeah, that's nice. Because what I want to do is make sure the glow behind it is like circular. We'll set the height and width of the pseudo element to also be 100. Border radius 100%. I'm going to change background color to background and then do like a radial gradient. That starts out pretty dark, but then goes to transparent. what I wanted to do. Okay, cool. Cool, but I want it to extend a little further. So what if I make the width and height a little bigger? And then we'll have to do top is -25 and left is -25. That should shift it, yes, to being centered. That's awesome. And because I'm now doing something that overlaps a little bit, I want to do a margin on the entire links for 25 to accommodate for that. There we go, we're back to center. And I want to make sure it's fully transparent before it hits the edges. That's not right. That is closer. We're getting there. What if we hit transparent at 90? This is a lot of like try and figure it out, throw stuff against the wall and figure out what sticks. The problem is that I don't actually want it to be like black. I think I just want a darker shade of what the background is. Like that. Not actually making this change. I can reset that with a little refresh. Like this. Yeah, that's a good glow. Let's add the label back in just to see how it all works together. Yeah, so that'll be like our hover state. And I'm just tweaking things to make sure it feels right. It actually might be too dark. So 3-1 is what our background is. And then what if we tried that? That's too subtle. Look, if you want to be better than me, definitely establish your color palette beforehand, but you know, trial and error. Okay, so that is lovely. What I'm going to do is give this opacity 0 as well. So now both these things are going to be hidden by default, but then when the A tag is being focused or hovered on, then I'm going to make the and before and the hidden label both gain a new styling rule that gives them opacity of 1. And to make this like a smoother transition, I'm going to do transition all 0.2 seconds to make sure that kind of fades in and doesn't just jump in. So now what should happen is by default, we don't have that hover state. And when we hover or when we tab to it, because it is a link, so it should be able to get keyboard focus, we get that hover state. So that's fun. That gives us a little more interactivity. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the links. Oh, also catching myself, now that we have a label, that label is always going to be present in the DOM, even though it's not always visible, but it will always be visible to a screen reader. So we no longer need to use alt text. We can replace that alt text with just this attribute, just the word alt. That makes it blank alt text, which means that the screen reader will just skip over the image part and just read out the GitHub part. So this is a lot better for screen readers. Now we have all of our links, but we can see they're all a little too close together. So let's go ahead in here, and for each A tag, we're gonna want to add margin or padding. Let's go ahead and do padding. Just spread them out by 1 element. Is that too big? That's a little too big. And we also don't need padding on the top and bottom to be exactly the same. So that could look like 0.25 and then 1 to kind of spread them out. That's better. I like that. Ooh, and now this is off center. Just change that to margin. There we go. That's nice. That is nice and functional. Now we can move on to the projects component. So the projects component is just like a section that should be slightly darker for some visual interest and list all of our projects. So let's go ahead and actually make it a section. And then we can probably reuse this class because we're going to use it again for the experience part later. So section class dark section. And then just so this is visible, test, test, test. And here in styles, because we can share all these styles, we're going to do dark section, background, nope, background color, 1, 3, 4, 3, C. Awesome. Let's go ahead and add in some padding and a margin. I actually don't want side margins because we're already accounting for that with our main section, but I do want a border radius. Let's make that just like 10 pixels. Yeah, that's nice. And we are going to continue on with our heading hierarchy. So H2, we've got projects. And then for each project, we're going to have an H3, but that's going to be like div class project, just as like an example. Div class project, H3, and just as our example, we're going to do I miss my cafe, which was 2021 to present. And then let's throw in some more Ipsum text. And then the way I did this previously, I'll recreate it for now and we might move away from that. But the way I did this previously was to have this kind of split into halves. So it was like half the description and then half the photo. Image, source, assets, projects, I miss my cafe. And again, the alt text is I miss my cafe. Screenshot, because it is relevant here that it is a screenshot. So thing that we can do is fix some of our header styling. So if we come back to style CSS, we can make this more specific because our H1 too should be bigger. Like, oops. Font size, how big is 3? Probably really big. Not that big at all. I like that. That's bold. H2. Font size should be slightly smaller, but bigger than it is right now. And then H3. Same. Let's give this 2. And we also want to make this a different color. And I'm referencing the old site, DC4DF. And I know I should clean up those color variables. That's it for shared styles for now. So back in projects, we want a single project to be on the same line. So I'm going to use flex again. And then we should probably set a width for these. No, because we want them to be responsive. So what if I just do width 50%? Okay. Well, it changed the height, but that's okay, actually. What I don't like here is how much margin space the header is taking up. I'm assuming that's the margin space of the header. Yeah, that's way too much margin. So let's fix that in our main styles. Yeah, that's so much better. Yeah, that's nice. And then we're just going to keep plowing right ahead. We're going to copy and use what we just did for experience as well. experience, except we won't need this project part, but we do need the section and the header. And then for each experience, I think that would be like a div, and then again, H3, job title. And then a description, div, class, position. And I want these to sit next to each other. So I'm just gonna put 2 of them so we can see them do that. And then we'll put a div around them because we don't want the header to be included in this. Jobs. Wrap them in that. Fix our spacing. Because then what we can do is say, well, jobs is going to be a flex box, so things will kind of wrap around it nicely. And then for each job, did I call that position? That should probably be the same. No need to make it harder for myself. So then for each job, we're gonna say the width, if I can spell width, is gonna be 50%. Yeah, and now they'll stack nicely next to each other, and then I can add as many as I want with them. I actually think I need an H4 here too for company. Like that. Yeah. Except again, it's giving me a little too much margin. And then, do I want a footer? I currently don't have a footer, but I don't like that the experience is bumping right up against the bottom like that. So what I can do is either add a margin to the bottom of experience, or I can pad out the footer. I think the right thing to do here would be to adjust the margins of the darkened sort of section box that we're reusing here. I got it. It was adding a different height property on body, switching it from 100% to fit content. So we're back. There's no weird gap at the bottom anymore. And now we can get to the part I really wanted to get to, which was the skills. Haven't really thought about how I'm going to do this part yet. I could, for each skill, do like a little div. So this would be like Angular, and then make them all show up that way. But I don't really want to type them all out this way. Like, I feel like the right answer here is to do like a ng4 and then list them out in the component itself, because that way it'll be a lot easier to edit them down the line. So this would be like skills equals, and then it would be like an array of Angular, React, JavaScript, Python. And now ng4 is let's skill of skills. That's not how you do an ng4, is it? Oh, no, I said let and I didn't type let. Oh, I have to import the common module. Because now I can just be like skill, right? Yeah, there we go. Okay. And now we can give this a class, which one I'll call skill. These could be called pills just because they look like little pills. Skill. And how do these work? Background color. I think I'm using white, which means the color of the text we actually have to override. And make black. I want a little, nope, border radius. Maybe 5 or so. And I want them all to be the same width. So I'm going to do min width, let's guess 75. I can can also probably do font size and lock that in, which is a little less accessible, I know. Don't want them to grow all the way wide. There we go. Yeah, okay. But I also want a little bit of padding. And I want the text to be centered. And then I want a little bit of box shadow. Let's start with one. And then like a light or a slightly transparent black. And we can edit that better in the Chrome tools because I love these Chrome tools. It'll probably be like directly beneath it with a little blur and a little spread. That's nice. That gives it a real sense of depth. That feels good. And I want this to be even more transparent. Awesome. Okay, so now the question is, first of all, how do we spread them out? And then how do we make them clickable? So let's focus on first spreading them out. Let's make this list longer. I'll fill it out with different skills later, I promise. But for now, let's just duplicate that list a bunch of times so we have more of these to play with. And then what I'm going to do, I think it makes sense to manually assign them a position and then just like jitter the way it rotates a little bit. So it seems kind of random because what I don't want to happen is risk any of them overlapping. And I also want to make sure that they're evenly distributed at every screen size. So what I'm going to do is like a style left and then manually assign that for each of these at like, I don't know, let's say like 10% increments or 5% increments. Maybe we use a function to get that and calculate it. But either way, this would be dependent on the nth index that each one is. So we're going to do let's skill of skills. And then we're going to use the index, like index as I. Because what I want to do is something like I times 10. And then this would be like adding in the percent sign. I have no idea if that's going to work. I feel like no. Oh, except it kind of did. We have this calculated. We just haven't made this an absolute position. Because each skill should be position absolute. If I could spell absolute, it would really help me out. Yeah, that's beautiful. But it is making me realize that we need to put these in a larger container. So let's do a div class skill wrapper. Open up that div, throw this inside. Because skill wrapper, position relative, so it can hold all those absolute positions in it. And then we're going to make the width of this 100%. And we're going to hard code the height of this. Let's make it like 200 pixels for those things to spread out in. That's beautiful. That's going to work really well. Because then we're also going to randomize the tops. All right, so we have let's skill of skills, indexes I. We can arrange these at 10% increments. And then we're also going to want to do style top. And we don't want this to be random or in an order. What we actually want is probably to have like 3 lines of them. So maybe this would be like index modulo 3 times 33. And then again, plus percent to pass a value that logically makes sense. Yeah, that That's beautiful. That I did not expect that to work on my first try. I thought I was misremembering how modulo works, but that is really lovely. I'm going to go ahead and do a +1 to offset this and make sure it's not like boop, 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 boop. That's not what I meant. I +1. That's also not what I meant. Yeah, that feels a bit more natural. If we do padding in here of like 20 pixels or so, will that prevent these from being assigned to the edges? No. It would if it was a margin. Yeah. And also this shouldn't be 10. This should be the number of total skills like divided, you know what I mean? So if we assume the farthest it can go over is to the right is 90%, then we divide that by skills length. Again, spelling really helps you out. That came together nicer than I thought it would. And also is making me realize now we have too many skills. That a bit overkill. So let's delete some of these. Does that feel like a better number? Yeah, that feels like a better number. And now we also want to assign it some degree of like random variation. So style transform would be get random rotation and not star. And then we just got to write that function. Not in the CSS. Get random rotation. And it should return something like rotate, and I'm just hard coding this just to test. Rotate 10 degrees. We didn't save it, but that would help us out. Yeah, okay, so now we want to actually get a random value. We want to put it in here. No, I can do that better, can't I? Rotate. Random val. Dag. And then we'll do like let random val equals map.random times, let's say we give it a range of 20 degrees. And we started out at -10. So that should go from -10 to positive degrees and pull it randomly each time. Yeah, now they're all random. That looks good. That looks really good. I actually think we could do even with a bit more range and randomness. So if I do 30 and take this to -15, that looks pretty nice. And each time I reload it, those should go randomly. Yeah. Again, I think there might be too many, but that's okay. I can figure that out later, because what we need to do now is make them draggable and droppable. So Angular has some things built in, like mouse down, mouse move, mouse leave, that we can use to control these things, or at least handle the handlers that we're going to make. So what we want to happen is if I click on one of these little skill pills, if I do a mouse down, then I want it to start dragging, and I would want the pill to enter a state of following my mouse. And then wherever I release it, I would want it to stop dragging. So a mouse sort of release property. And so I want to capture mouse down on the pill. Mouse down, and we're going to make a new handler for that. So that would be something like start dragging. And then we would make this is dragging is true. And what's tricky is we don't want all of them to follow the mouse. We want that specific one to follow the mouse. So what we would need to pass is what it's on, like which index. So maybe we do like I to indicate the index number. And then we can do like currently dragging. Well, currently dragging is undefined, but it would be number 4. Undefined. Currently dragging equals whatever index we pass it. And then back here, we would pass it the index. So we could give that a class. We could be like class dragging equals if currently dragging, which if we set it to the index is this same index, then we should add class dragging. We would want to change the position to fixed, and we would want then the left and the top to follow wherever the mouse is. So we would actually change it with this. So this would become, is this the one we're currently dragging? If so, do something, get mouse position maybe, else do this other thing. How do we want to get the mouse position? The mouse position would be updated whenever we do like mouse move. So maybe actually it's easier just to maintain the mouse position and then pass it. So like mouse X and mouse Y, and those similar to currently dragging would both be number or undefined. This might not make sense. We might have to come back to this, but left would be mouse X. And same deal here. If this is the one that's being currently dragging, then we'll use mouse Y. Otherwise, we'll do that random calculation thing. This would be where we do mouse move. And it would be like mouse move, mouse move, and then we pass the event that's happening. So here, mouse move. Nope, we called that event E mouse event. Yeah, so anytime the mouse moves over the skill wrapper, we're going to call that handler for mouse move. If start dragging has already been called, so we've already clicked down on a little skill pill, then we want to do something. So let's go ahead and do if is dragging. Actually, we're going to do like an opposite here. So if we're not dragging, then just return. We have nothing to do here. But if we are dragging, then we want to update the mouse X, mouse Y positions. So we'd be like this mouse X equals the event page X. And we'd want a little bit of offset, but let's leave that to figure out later. That's not what's supposed to happen. Uh-oh. It's because every time we get that, we get another random one. Because we're causing it to reload. Because we're doing that check over and over again. That's a problem. We want all those things to be random at the start and then set. Let's add an on a knit. Is this going to be messy? Maybe. Probably, definitely. Implements on a knit. And when we do the on a knit, let's generate all the positions. Skill positions is going to start as an empty array. We're going to take the logic that we were doing over here and we're just going to move it. Not there. So we were doing like for skill and skills. So the first one, skill positions, push, and we'll make it like a tuple, like a list with 2 items in it for X and Y. So X would be, I'm doing this wrong because I don't need skill and skills. I need like let I equals 0, I is less than this dot skills dot length, and then I plus plus. That should iterate right. And now we're gonna push this value, which we already established. That's how we're gonna make the X, and then same thing that we did to determine the Y value. So we're just really copying a lot of this logic. And this is upset because we didn't define what type of array this could be. It is an array. Because now what'll happen, we'll call init and then we'll populate skill position. And then from here, we can do this without doing the math each time. Because currently dragging is either going to be mouse X or skill positions, index I, index 0, plus percentage to get us there properly. There we go. Okay, we're back to normal. That's still making them random. So let's go ahead and set that in the initial position as well. Is this hacky? Yes, it is. I'm sorry. It very much is, because we're also going to handle a string array. Because I just don't want to deal with defining a new type. I should. The right way to do this would be to define a type that has 2 numbers and then a string, and then store those all in one thing. I could do that. I should do that. Okay, you've got me. Twist my arm. This should be type skill position. Actually, that should have a capital S. Type skill position, an array of type number, string. And now skill positions is that, which, yep, hold on. Now position is of type skill position. Yeah, you happy? You happy now? You're gonna come after me? Just kidding. This is the right way to do it. But we're still assigning that separately. So hold on. Style transform. It's going to be skill positions index 2. Because that should generate once and then not again. So these, great, aren't moving anymore. I can click them and that causes it to jump the first time, which is concerning. But we'll get there. Because now, okay, so now we have, that's working better. That's great. Console log start drag. This is how I debug. It's called adding a bunch of console commands everywhere, which I refuse to be shamed for because it works. Okay, so start dragging goes off, awesome. And then I also want console log to go off for mouse moving. And then I want to log, let's just log the X to make sure that's working correctly. Yeah, so that's working. I'm actually going to move this below is dragging though to make sure that it's not just randomly going off. Oh, is this because I'm not making it like a PX? It works. It works so well. I can't make it stop. We haven't coded for that, but okay, that works. That works great. We do need it to be moved over to the left and up slightly, which we can do. We made the maximum width, what, like 75? The min width 75. Let's bump that up to 80. because math. X minus 40, and then Y minus, we made the font 16. So you understand now why I hard-coded the font. And 8, and we're handling PX in the HTML. That looks better. I could actually do a little more, and this might just be trial and error. That's not bad. What I do want to do is make sure the cursor indicates that this can be moved though. So I'm going to change the CSS to make the cursor be a pointer. So remember I did this. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to put it on class skill wrapper because again, the mouse won't always be over the pill when we're moving it around. We're going to actually use is dragging because it doesn't matter which we're on when that's true. Skill wrapper. And if it has class dragging, cursor isn't going to be pointer. What is it going to be? What's the name of that? I think it's called grabbing. And this actually shouldn't be pointer. It should be grab. So if I hover over this, it becomes grab. And now it's grabbing. That works. We're still a little off center. And we still can't let go. Trial and error, baby. That's good. That's good. The hand didn't change though. Did I do that wrong? It's being overridden. It's being overridden by cursor grab. That's what's happening. So I'm actually going to add this class to both. Oops. We need it to be able to stop. Mouse up should stop dragging. So let's add a new handler. And I don't think we'll need to pass it anything because we just need it to stop. And I'm realizing as I'm doing this that this is going to cause it to jump back to its original position. So we're going to have to make a fix for that, but we can. Stop dragging, is dragging, false. We can actually clean these both up because currently dragging could be used for is dragging too if it's undefined. Like we could just say if currently dragging isn't undefined. This doesn't work because 0 isn't truthy. So if currently dragging is undefined, return there, that fixed that. And then this sets currently dragging to be undefined. So now instead of having is dragging and currently dragging represents whether or not we're dragging, as long as it's not equal to undefined. I spelled this wrong? Yes, I did. It's not strop. Okay, stop dragging. Okay, because now what should happen is I can click it, I can grab it, and then if I let go, we're back to a not dragging state. Awesome. The problem is just that it snaps back. So we want that to stop. The reason it snaps back is because if it's not currently dragging, we go back to the skill position. So we can fix that by updating the skill position when we're updating the mouse that is moving. So here in mouse move, we are changing mouse X and mouse Y. Oh, we don't even have to maintain mouse position then, do we? Hold on. I always want to double check myself when I'm assuming things about the state management of Angular, but I think because we could just do this skills positions I 0 equals this skill positions I 1 equals this. Comment this out just to test it. And we're not currently passing I, but we know which one it is because we're using currently dragging. So let's actually do that instead of pretending we're going to pass I. Forget that I said that. That was wrong. Because we're already maintaining in state, which that is. We're going to run into an issue with pixels or not. These could just all three be strings, couldn't they? We don't need to maintain skill position because this is just going to be a bunch of strings. Yep. Because this would be like this. Because remember, these have to be percents plus percent. So that works. This is a list of strings. And all that, I went through all that with the custom type. What are you going to do? Yeah, hold on. Because this could just always be, we don't have to check if it's dragging or not. This will just always be whatever is in the skill positions array. And if I'm dragging it, it'll update that way. That works, baby! That looks really good. The hand looks really good. It doesn't snap back like it did with the old site. That's delightful. That gives us a lot to play with. And then I just want to check if we're on a larger screen size. Ooh, that's interesting. That makes sense, actually. If we haven't placed it yet, it'll be using percent. And if we have, it'll be using pixels. But I actually don't think that's a deal breaker. I just want to make sure that it generates nicely each time. This could be cleaner, probably. But you know what? I think it's good enough. Good enough for government work. I don't work in the government. I don't know why I said that. We have the functionality of skill positions, and I can come back and clean this up later. There's a way to prevent highlighting, I think. We have our header. We have our links with the nice focus states. We have projects, and we have job experience and no weird gap at the bottom. So you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about this as a starting point. So I am going to clean this up a little bit, add my own experience, put it on my GitHub, and then work on deploying this as my portfolio site. I think that's it. I think that's as far as I can get today. I will go back and clean it up and everything, but thank you for joining me today. I hope that was interesting.